Hello and welcome, fellow warriors of light. I am Dark Knight 88, and I am here today with an intensive tank video for the new Dark Knight class. I will also be posting up tonight a Dark Knight tank video of me taking on Dark Knight in one of the last 10 dungeons. Kind of will help you to see a little bit how this tanking style I'm going to show you and it in gameplay works with each other. I will leave a link in the description so that you can go to it after this video. And as with that said, there are a few things we're going to cover today. First are rumors. I'm sure a lot of people have been reading the forums and hearing quite a lot of negative things about Dark Knight. First thing I want to do is kind of put these rumors to rest, as a lot of the people who are writing these rumors have either never played a Dark Knight, wrote them before the Dark Knight came out, or do not know how to play a Dark Knight, or have healed someone else who did not know how to play a Dark Knight and so they feel they are squishy. We're going to go over the styles of tanking. We're going to go over your skills, and then a few other things and stats that you should be stacking on your Dark Knight. So first let's go over the rumors. The first rumor, of course, is that a Dark Knight is being squishy, and followed closely is that they are useless for raid tanking. Now, a Dark Knight is not squishy at all. I ran a run last night where I tanked 10 mobs and had a good healer and no issues staying up. I got low a couple of times, but I popped my cooldowns up, made sure everything ran, and we didn't die once. I did, however, die, and I will explain that in a bit of why that happened. Had nothing to do with the Dark Knight as much as my own mistakes. Now, let's go ahead and move into our styles of tanking. Now, you have two different styles of tanking. You have offensive or aggressive tanking, which is more like the original warrior and still how the warrior is being played now, and the defensive, more paladin-like tanking. Now the question is, when do you use which, and should you pick one over the other? Truth be told, you should be using both, and you just switch during the mode and then during the time when you need to. So, say for example you're tanking a mob of 5 or 10 enemies. What should you be in? Obviously defensive. You want damage mitigation over that attack, brute attack. This helps your healer being able to easily keep you up, as well as run in and cast Holy and spam the Holy, that way they can burn quickly. This is useful for speed runs or just getting rid of mobs because you don't want to spend 40 minutes in a dungeon. Defensive tanking is very useful for this, and the gear set you're going to want to use for defensive tanking is going to, of course, be highly vitality stacked, as well as all my accessories are vitality stacked. The skills you're going to use are going to be your AoEing skills, as well as your correctly rotating your damage mitigators, and then, of course, your only skill that you're going to use to rebuild your hit points up. You should not have to use your power slash combo at all for mob tanking. It should be going between your Unleash, Abyssal Drain, Salted Earth, and pretty much just your Soul Eater combo. Now, the aggressive tanking is what you would use more for bosses. That is going to use more of a DPS setup, which is going to be strength stacked accessories, which are extremely useful in this case in point. Now, the aggressive tanking style is only going to be used on bosses, and not every boss. There are some bosses you're going to want defense on, but most bosses you're going to want to go aggressive, and that's also going to require switching in and out of grid stance, as well as keeping your dark side up and correctly rotating your aggressive rotation, which is a little more difficult, and I will go into when we get into actual rotations. Stats wise, your bonus stats, if you really want it, should be in strength. That gives me brute attack power, which also helps me self-heal myself, which is very useful during the bosses. The extra 2,000 hit points, 2.5 I might have gotten from vitality, really will not beat the amount of self-healing I can do, as that helps me sustain myself much better. Now let's go ahead and take a look at our skills. We're going to take a look at our combos first. Oops, wrong button. Combos first. We have 3 different combos that Dark Knight uses. Hard Slash, Spinning Slash, Power Slash. This is your aggro building combo and has a potency of, if I'm correct, about 370, I believe. So that's no, sorry, not 300, 670. Yeah, sorry, yep, 670. Sorry, I just double checked that. And it's your enmity building combo, so you only need to use it when you need to build enmity on a single target. Your other 2 combos are what I usually use more often. The first is Hard Slash, Siphon Strike, and Soul Eater, which is my main. This has normally a potency of 260, 250, so that's 400, 300, sorry, 510, so 650. This is almost 600, sorry, 660. It also helps you redo your life as you absorb 100% of your life, and rebuild MP as this restores MP. The other one is Hard Slash, Siphon Strike, and Delirium. Now Delirium is your strongest hitting combo, as it'll hit for 680. It will also reduce target's intelligence by 10% for 20 seconds, and again, of course, you would use Siphon Strike with it, which allows you to, of course, restore your MP. Very useful on a Dark Knight. MP is more useful than TP, actually. Now we're going to go and take a look at our different stances. You have 2 different stances, which you can actually activate at the same time. First is Grit, your tank stand. Reduce damage received by 20%, lowers damage dealt by 20%, and increases enemy, as well as increasing your accuracy by 5%. Dark Side, MP is slowly drained while increasing damage dealt by 15%. What this means is that, and MP refreshing statuses don't work, like Mage's Bout will not work. What this means is that you can potentially take, instead of taking a 20% debuff in Grit, you only take a 5% damage debuff, or you'll gain 15% in DPS stance. Very useful, as well as you need Dark Side on to use a couple of skills, as well as Dark Arts, which we'll get into later. Dark Arts. Dark Arts is a skill you learn at level 45, and this allows you to change the skills you certainly use. Maybe increase their potency, add an extra ability, or increase the enmity they give. For example, this with Power Slash increases enmity. This with Soul Eater changes Soul Eater's potency from 260 to 400, making it a lot more potent. This with Dark Mind increases your magic defense. This with Dark Dance gives you an evasion rate as well as a parry rate. With Abyssal Drain gives you a full absorption. So this is extremely useful. Read through your skills, find which ones have a Dark Arts added on ability. It's very important to make sure you do this. You know what these moves do. Now we're going to go and cover our DOTs. We have our main DOT, which is Scourge. This has a potency of, if I remember correctly, 500. Extremely useful, keep it up every 30 seconds, and 500 potency. The second one that we come with on this class is Salted Earth, which is a potency of 75, chaining many that enters for 21 seconds. It's on a 45-second recast timer, and does a total of 525 base potency. This, of course, is without skill speed being put in the equation, as well as your 2 stances. Now we're going to take a look at our cooldowns. We have our defensive cooldowns first. First we get is Shadow Skin. 20% damage reduction for 20 seconds, has a cooldown of 90 seconds. The next one we get is Reprisal. Now Reprisal is a tricky one, and I'm going to throw some of that damage mitigation cooldowns, as it has a cooldown, and even though it's an attack, it is for damage mitigation. It can only be used after parrying attack, has a potency of 210, but it lowers target's damage dealt by 10% for 20 seconds. If you build your parry up like you should be able to keep this up every 30 to 40 seconds. Extremely useful if you're tanking, of course. Dark Dance is the next one, increases parry by 30%. Goes perfectly with Reprisal. It lasts 20 seconds, is on a 60-second cooldown. Dark Mind increases magic vulnerability by reduces magic vulnerability by 15%. Lasts 10 seconds, is on a 60-second cooldown, can only be used with Dark Side. If used with Dark Arts, it increases it to 30%, doubling its efficiency. Extremely useful on magically strong bosses. Shadow Wall reduces damage by 30%, lasts 10 seconds on a 3-minute cooldown. Living Dead, of course, this is pretty much our form of the skills that the Warrior and the Paladin have, which I can't remember what they taught me. But I find this, at first I thought it was useless, and then I looked closer at it and I really love it. It grants us the effect of Living Dead. If our hit points is reduced to 0 while out of this effect, we will not die. Instead we change to a status called Walking Dead. When we hit Walking Dead, the healer has 10 seconds to heal us at the max. White mages really complement us with their Benediction. In fact, the White Mage should really hold Benediction until we cast this spell. As they're pretty much on the same cooldown, it will ensure that it goes one-on-one with each other. Now that is really it for our defensive cooldowns, unless you want to go and throw in Soul Survivor, which isn't really a defensive cooldown, but it does help us, and that marks the target with the status Another Victim. If that target should be KO'd in battle, 20% of MP and hit points are restored. Great for mob fights, great for mob bosses. So let's go and take a look at our offensive cooldowns. Now our offensive cooldowns we have, the first one is Blood Weapon. Now Blood Weapon cannot be used in Grit, which means you have to go to a defensive stance in order to use this. Increases attack speed by 10% and converts physical damage dealt into MP. This skill right here is one of the big reasons I have decided to go with this style of tanking. Being as Square Enix gave us a skill that we cannot use in Grit, made me feel like, yes, this is the way it needs to go. Along with a couple of the other side effects, which I'll go into as I hit those skills. Our other cooldown is Blood Price, which restores partial MP when damage is taken. This is beautiful in defensive tanking with mobs. You will never run out of MP. And it lasts 15 seconds, more than efficient. This is on a 40-second cooldown. Blood Weapon is on a 40-second cooldown. These can be up all the time. Now we're going to take a look at our just off general cooldown abilities, and then we'll take a actually no, we're going to take a look at our AoEs first. AoEs first, and then we'll take a look at our off general cooldowns. Now our first AoE is Unleash. Unleash is pretty much your flash or your overpower. Exact same thing as those. Potency of 100, increased enemy. Enough said. However, at level 56, we get Abyssal Drain, which costs slightly bit more MP. However, does 120 potency, so 20 more potency, doing more damage. And with Dark Arts, it gives us 100% damage dealt as hit points. So we get absorption, right? We get absorbed with that. Now we take a look at our off the general cooldown abilities, starting at the top. First, of course, being Low Blow, which is our stun, and it's really cool, might I add. But also has an effect that 30% chance the next parry will reset the recast timer. So if our next parry has a chance to reset it. Works quite often, I love it. Amend, this is pretty much our shield lob or tomahawk. Really cool ability. It also has a 30% chance that the next unleash will cost no MP. That's a great thing when you don't have much MP and you hit it and you got that to grab everything. Love it. Reprisal we've gone over. The next one will be Dark Passage. Deals unaspected damage with a potency of 150 to all enemies in a straight line before you. It can only be used in Dark Side. Has a recast of 30 seconds. With Dark Arts, it's a 250 potency with Blind. Useful in mob fights, not so much in single target fights. Great in mob fights though. Our next one is Plunge. I love Plunge, one of my favorite abilities, probably second to favorite following Carve and Spit. A jumping attack with a potency of 200, cannot be exceeded while bound, has a 30-second recast timer. When you have that boss that throws that ring circle AoE that you gotta run out of, and then jump and attack, run back into attack, this is great for cutting that time and just attacking them. Or should you have a mob that's leaving, just jump and attack them real fast. It allows you to easily get your combos on instead of waiting for them to come to you. Our last one, of course, is Carve and Spit. Love Carve and Spit. This is the other reason I feel like a Dark Knight is meant to switch between its tank and defensive style in combat. Delivers a threefold attack with a potency of 100. Also restores MP if not used while under the effect of Dark Arts. So if used regularly, you get MP. Obviously for tanking. However, if used with Dark Arts, a 450 potency, obviously for DPS numbers. So when you look at the classes, look at the potency, look at these skills, you really can see that there's a strong potency increase on a lot of them, which really drives me to feel the way I feel. Our last thing is additional. First, of course, is Provoke, which I always think it's asinine that you have to get level 22 to get this skill. Really should have been a low-level skill as every tank needs it. It's a necessity, not an option. So 22 I felt was a little BS. Bloodbath converts 50% of physical damage dealt into hit points. Last 15 seconds. Foresight, increased defense by 20%. Convalescence, increased healing, and of course Fracture, you're my third DOT. Now, this is... I'm not really going cross classes since these have been covered. You should know what these are by now if you've been playing the game for a while. So now we're going to take a look at stats. Of course, all my bonus points are in strength. Why? I feel that's much more successful. DPS-wise, my accessories are strength. Defense-wise, my accessories are all Vite. As you can see, my attack power is 660 in tank mode, and I have over 1400 hit points in tank mode. In my DPS mode, I'm almost at 800 potency, 800 attack power, and my hit points are almost at 12k. Not much of a difference, but it does put out better numbers. So now we're going to take a look at our secondary skills. Obviously, parry is going to be your most necessary skill. As almost all of our abilities are coming off of parry, I find parry one of the highest useful. Defense and magic defense, which of course will automatically be up by gear, not really secondary stance. The next one's going to be between crit and determination. I am starting to love crit because now crit increases the damage that is done and the frequency, which means when I crit more often and I crit harder. So I'm stacking crit in this case, because when I crit with a Soul Eater in tank mode and gain 1600 hit points, that's a really nice heal. So let's go ahead and take another. First is reasons to die. Why should you die on a dark night? Number one, bad heals. It happens. I'm not that tank blaming healers when I die, but I will say if I'm between 2 and 3k for 5 to 10 seconds, that's on the healer. If I'm going up and down, up and down, up and down, that's on me. Which leads us to number 2. And 3, either low gear or bad cooldown rotations. If I'm going all the way up and going all the way down, going all the way up and going all the way down, if I'm blowing my cooldowns right, my gear's not good enough for it, obviously, and I love that healer. If my cooldowns aren't being used, then it's obviously my cooldowns. And again, I love that healer. So there are times when it is on the healer and when it is on you. It's important to differentiate the two. You don't want to blame the healer when it's on you, and you don't want the healer to blame you and accept it when it's on them. Reasons to lose aggro. Low gear. If you're going against a DPS who has 20 eye levels on you, you might lose aggro. You don't have your tank stance on. Make sure you always have that tank stance on to at least build aggro. And the last one is your rotation is off. So with that said, we're going to go and move into our rotation. We're going to start with our defensive rotation first, as this is what you use for mobs. For defensive, it's a very simple rotation, easy to do. Pretty much, all you're going to run is your Unleash or Abyssal Drain, either or. And you just spam it. So let's say we start off, say this mob is off, there's a group around it. I'm either going to start with Unleash or Unmend. I prefer Unmend or Plunge. I prefer Plunge as it cuts that distance. Or I might even hit both like this. At that point, I just start spamming Unleash, hit my Cypher Strike for my MP, go and hit my hit points up, and then at this point, I'm just going to stick to Unleash. Now, should I be able to hit my Blood Price cooldown, I would pop on Dark Side, pop Dark Art, and then hit Abyssal Drain for the absorption. Now, when you run out of MP, all you do is you mark the target you want hit, and you just build up your MP. That's simple. That is all the attack rotations require. Of course, the hardest part of defensive tanking is rotating between your cooldowns. You've got to keep those cooldowns on and use them correctly. So in other words, if you just spam them one after the other, you're going to be out of cooldowns way too soon. You need to learn to watch and spam your cooldowns when you're taking the most damage, and spam them in the priority. For example, if I'm taking medium to low damage, Bloodbath and Foresight at the same time. If I'm taking medium to high damage, Convalescence and Shadowskin. If I'm going to take high damage, Shadow Wall. Parry I keep up as much as possible, and if I have a lot of magic users, then of course Dark Mind. If I'm going to be in a big mob where I might die, Living Dead. Also things to keep in mind. Salted Earth. You should be on for mobs, for DPS, and you should use Carve and Spit for MP regeneration when it's on cooldown. With that said, we're now going to go into our aggressive tanking. Aggressive tanking I enjoy a lot more, as I feel it's a lot more enjoyable. This is the part of a Dark Knight that is fun. So, the first thing I do is I always start with Darkness and Grit on. Make sure those are always on before I go into a battle, and make sure that I switch to my DPS gear set so that I have that 796. I always plunge at the boss. And the first thing I do is I plunge, I do 3 Power Slash combos, and then the rest of them I do is a Delirium, and then the Dark Arts with Soul Eater, popping Blood Weapon when it is off cooldown, of course, using Dark Arts with Carve and Spit, and then keeping my DOTs on. So just wait, and here we go. So here's my first combo. Combo number 2. By this third one, I have done enough damage and built up enough aggro that I'm going to have no problem keeping aggro. At this point, switch out as tank mode, pop blood weapon, pop blood price, dark art, carbon spit, delirium, salt earth. I'm gonna use Void now, stun, Forge, Plunge, Fracture, Dark Passage, and then I just go back into rotating my Dark Arts and Solitaire combo until I get low and need to switch to Delirium, or until Delirium comes off. Now, important thing to remember is, should you get to a point where you feel you're taking too much damage, and you need to get your defense back up and go into a defensive stance, all you do at that point is switch to grid stance. Don't switch your tanking, don't switch your rotation, just put on grid stance, get your blood price up, and then just continue your combo up. Use your carbon spit for defensive. And that is all your offensive is. Should you start to lose aggro, throw in 1 or 2 of your power slash combos. The rest is just that. You have no reason to use Unleash, no reason to use Abyssal Drain on a single target. The only AoE you should pop them down is your Salted Earth for the DOT. So, that's about it for this guide. If you have any questions, please feel free to message me in the comments box. I'm always here to help. If you're in Final Fantasy XIV, you can ask me your server and I'll let you know where I'm at. And you can follow me there. Anyways, I hope that this has helped you a lot, and should you need any help, please feel free to ask. I am still new at the Dark Knight, but I've been taking in both WoW and Final Fantasy XIV for about 2 years now. Dark Knight is very similar to the tank I played in WoW, which is a Death Knight, and I will say that they play very similarly, and I really enjoy them both. If you have questions about other classes, I've played every class, feel free to ask. I have a lot of friends often approach me for information. I am more than happy to answer any questions you have. With that, I'll be signing off, and thank you for watching. This is Dark Knight 88, and you have a good day.